The hotel key card fell from the jacket pocket and landed face up on the hardwood floor. Naomi stared at it, her hand still holding Brett's blazer, the one he'd worn yesterday when he said he was working late. The Riverside Inn. Room 347. She picked it up slowly, her fingers trembling, and that's when she saw the receipt tucked in the inner pocket. Dinner for two. Champagne. Chocolate-covered strawberries sent to the room. Her stomach twisted into knots. This couldn't be happening. Not to her. Not after everything she'd sacrificed. She'd come home early from her conference in Atlanta, excited to surprise her husband of 3 years. The house was empty, exactly as she'd left it, except for this blazer hanging carelessly over the dining room chair. Brett wasn't expecting her until tomorrow. He'd been so specific about that on their phone call last night. Don't rush back, babe. Take your time. I'll be working late anyway. Naomi walked to his home office on shaking legs. She knew his computer password. He'd never bothered to change it, never thought he needed to hide anything from his wife. She was wrong about that. She was wrong about everything. The laptop screen came to life and she navigated to his messages. What she found there made her sink into his leather chair, her breath coming in short gasps. Months of messages. Photos. Videos. A woman named Sienna. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. That lingerie you bought me is perfect. When are you going to leave her? Leave her. Leave Naomi. The woman he'd promised to love forever. She scrolled back. The affair had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of working late, and business trips, and guys' nights out. 8 months while Naomi had been the faithful, devoted wife, managing their home, supporting his career, believing in their future together. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brett, landing in an hour. Can you pick me up from the airport? He told her he was in Chicago for business. She looked at the hotel key card again. The Riverside Inn was 15 minutes from their house. Naomi's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, rage burned so hot through her veins she thought she might scream. She wanted to throw things, to break things, to call him right now and tell him exactly what she'd found. But something stopped her. Some instinct for survival, some voice in her head that said, wait, think, plan. She took photos of everything on his computer. Every message, every photo, every receipt she could find in his email. She documented it all, methodical despite her shaking hands. Then she checked their bank accounts. That's when the betrayal went from painful to devastating. Brett had been moving money. Their joint savings account, the one they'd been building together for years, was nearly empty. He'd transferred thousands to an account she didn't recognize. She dug deeper, finding payment records. Jewelry. Designer handbags. A weekend trip to Miami. All charged to their joint credit card, all for Sienna. He'd been spending Naomi's money on his mistress. She sat there in the darkness of his office, the laptop screen casting shadows across her face, and felt something inside her shift. The pain was still there, sharp and terrible, but something else emerged alongside it. Clarity. Determination. Strength she didn't know she had. She wouldn't cry. Not yet. Not where he could see. She would be smart about this. Naomi closed the laptop and put everything back exactly as she'd found it. She straightened the blazer on the chair, slipped the key card back into the pocket. Then she went upstairs, unpacked her suitcase and took a long shower. When she emerged, she looked at herself in the mirror. She was 32 years old, beautiful, intelligent, and she'd wasted 3 years on a man who didn't deserve her. Not anymore. By the time Brett's text came asking for a ride, she'd composed herself. Sorry, still in Atlanta, she texted back. Flight got delayed. Home tomorrow night. Okay, babe. Miss you. The lies came so easily to him. Naomi sat on their bed, the bed where she believed they were building a life together, and made a decision. She wouldn't confront him yet. She would wait. She would watch. She would gather evidence. And when the time was right, when she had everything she needed, she would make sure Brett regretted every single lie he'd ever told her. She pulled out her phone and searched for divorce attorneys in the area. She'd need a good one. Brett had made sure of that 3 years ago when he'd pressured her into signing that prenup. The prenup that gave her absolutely nothing if they divorced. The prenup she'd signed because she loved him, trusted him, believed they'd be together forever. She'd been such a fool. But she wouldn't be a fool anymore. Whatever it took, however long it took, she would find a way out of this marriage. And Brett would discover that the woman he'd underestimated, the woman he'd thought he could use and discard, was stronger than he'd ever imagined. The next morning, Naomi called the first attorney on her list. Then the second. By afternoon, she had a consultation scheduled for Monday morning. She'd use a personal day from work, tell Brett she was meeting an old friend for lunch. Another lie in a marriage built on lies. She spent the weekend maintaining the facade, texting Brett about her delayed return, while secretly watching his location on the phone tracker app they'd set up months ago for safety. Saturday evening, his phone showed him at the Riverside Inn for 3 hours. Sunday night she finally came home. Brett was waiting at the door with flowers and a smile. "I missed you so much," he said, pulling her into a hug. Naomi hugged him back and thought about all the times Sienna had been in his arms instead. She smiled and said, "I missed you too." The acting had begun. And she was better at it than she'd ever known. 3 years earlier, Naomi had been a different woman. Younger, more naive, desperately in love with Brett Hammond, the charming corporate executive who'd swept her off her feet at a charity gala. He'd been everything she'd thought she wanted. Confident, successful, attentive. He'd pursued her relentlessly, showing up at her office with coffee, taking her to expensive restaurants, introducing her to his friends and family. 6 months of dating turned into a proposal at sunset on the beach. She'd said yes without hesitation, already imagining their future together. The wedding planning had been a whirlwind. Brett wanted everything perfect, spare no expense. She'd been touched by how much he cared about their special day. Then came the prenup. It was 2 weeks before the wedding. Naomi had just finished her final dress fitting when Brett asked her to meet him at his attorney's office. She'd thought it was about finalizing some property paperwork for the house they were buying together. Instead, she walked into a conference room where Brett and his lawyer, a stern man named Gregory Walsh, were waiting with a thick stack of documents. "What's this?" she'd asked, confused. "Just a formality, sweetheart," Brett had said, his voice smooth as silk. "Standard prenuptial agreement. My father insisted on it. You know how he is about protecting the family assets." Naomi had picked up the document and started reading. The words blurred together at first, legal jargon she didn't fully understand. But the conclusion was crystal clear. In the event of divorce, Naomi would receive nothing. $0. No claim to any property, assets, or income acquired during the marriage. Nothing. "Brett, this says I get nothing if we divorce," she'd said slowly, looking up at him. "We're not going to divorce," he'd replied, taking her hands in his. "This is just a precaution. My father has been burned before. You understand? It doesn't mean anything because we're going to be together forever. But Brett, I have a career. I'll be contributing to our household, our life together. This makes it seem like everything is yours and nothing is mine." Gregory Walsh had interrupted, his voice clipped and professional. "Miss Foster, this is a standard agreement for individuals in Mr. Hammond's financial position. If you have concerns, you're welcome to have your own attorney review it." "We don't have time for that," Brett had said quickly. "The wedding is in 2 weeks. Everything is planned, everyone is coming. Look, Naomi, if you don't trust me, if you think our marriage is going to fail before it even starts, maybe we shouldn't." "No." The word had burst out of her. "No, of course I trust you. I love you." "Then sign it. It's just a piece of paper. It means nothing because we're never going to need it." She should have walked away. She should have demanded time to read it properly, to have her own lawyer review every line. But she'd been 29, in love, and terrified of losing the man she thought was her future. All their friends and family were expecting a wedding. The venue was booked, the flowers ordered, the honeymoon planned. How could she call it all off over a prenup that, as Brett said, they'd never need anyway? So she'd signed it. Right there in Gregory Walsh's office, with Brett's arm around her shoulders and his reassuring voice in her ear. She'd signed away any right to anything they built together. The wedding had been beautiful. The honeymoon in Bali had been perfect. The first few months of marriage had felt like a dream. Brett had been attentive and loving, and Naomi had convinced herself she'd made the right choice. Then the small changes began. Brett started working later. He became critical of how she managed their home. When she suggested they open a joint account for household expenses, he dismissed the idea. "I make more money. I'll handle the finances. You just focus on your little marketing job." Her little marketing job. She'd worked hard to build her career, but suddenly it seemed insignificant compared to Brett's corporate position. He'd started making decisions without consulting her. Big decisions. Like buying the house they lived in. Like choosing their cars. Like how they spent their money. "We're married," she protested once. "Shouldn't we make these decisions together?" "I'm making the money, Naomi. I'm taking care of us. Why do you have to question everything?" She'd learned to stop questioning. It was easier that way. Easier to let Brett make the decisions, to focus on being the perfect wife he seemed to expect. She cooked his favorite meals, kept their house spotless, attended his company events with a smile on her face. But inside she'd felt herself growing smaller. The confident, independent woman she'd been was fading away, replaced by someone who second-guessed herself constantly, who felt grateful for any scrap of attention or approval from her husband. Now, sitting in divorce attorney Rebecca Chen's office on Monday morning, Naomi looked at a copy of that prenup and felt sick. How had she let this happen? How had she signed away everything? This is a very one-sided agreement, Rebecca said, her sharp eyes scanning the document. Legally binding, unfortunately. You signed it willingly with counsel present before the marriage. Did you have your own attorney review it? No, Naomi admitted. Brett said there wasn't time and I trusted him. Rebecca set down the prenup and looked at Naomi directly. Tell me everything. Not just about the affair but about your marriage. About the finances. About any controlling behavior, any threats, anything that might give us leverage. For the next hour, Naomi talked. She told Rebecca about Brett's gradual control over their finances, his dismissal of her career, his criticism of everything she did. She showed her the evidence of the affair, the money he'd spent on Sienna from their joint accounts. This is good, Rebecca said finally. The adultery clause in the prenup is vague, but the financial misconduct gives us something to work with. He was spending marital assets on an extramarital affair. That's a clear violation of his fiduciary duty to you as a spouse. But will it be enough? Naomi asked. The prenup says I get nothing. Can we really fight that? We can try. At minimum, we can make this very uncomfortable for him. At best, we might be able to argue the prenup should be invalidated based on his misconduct. But Naomi, I need you to understand something. This is going to be a battle. Brett has money and resources. Do you have funds for legal fees? Naomi thought about her savings account, the one Brett didn't know about. She'd been secretly depositing small amounts from her paycheck for the past year, some instinct telling her to have something of her own. It wasn't much. Maybe $10,000. Enough for a retainer but not for a prolonged court battle. Some, she said. Not a lot. Then we need to be strategic. Keep documenting everything. Don't let him know you're planning to leave. The element of surprise is our friend here. And Naomi? Start thinking about your exit plan. Where you'll go, what you'll need. When you leave, you need to leave completely. Take everything that belongs to you because once you're gone, getting back into that house will be complicated. Naomi nodded, her mind already racing ahead. She'd thought signing that prenup was the worst mistake of her life. But maybe, just maybe, it would end up being Brett's mistake instead. The next 2 weeks were the longest of Naomi's life. Every morning she woke up next to Brett and forced herself to act normal. She made his coffee exactly how he liked it, kissed him goodbye when he left for work, and played the role of the perfect, unsuspecting wife. But every moment he was gone, she was busy. She started with their financial records. Brett had always handled their money, keeping her at arm's length from the details. Now she created spreadsheets documenting every transaction she could access. She printed bank statements. She photographed credit card bills. She discovered just how much money Brett had been funneling to his affair. $18,000 in the past 8 months. Jewelry from Tiffany's. Weekend trips to expensive resorts. A monthly allowance deposited directly into an account under Sienna's name. Meanwhile, Brett had been telling Naomi they needed to cut back on expenses, that they couldn't afford the vacation she'd wanted, that she should think twice before buying new work clothes. The hypocrisy made her furious. But she channeled that fury into action. She hired a private investigator. Rebecca had recommended someone discreet, someone who could document Brett's affair in ways that would hold up in court. The investigator's name was Patricia Diaz, a former police detective who now specialized in infidelity cases. I need photographs, Naomi had told her. Timestamps. Proof that he's been lying. I'll get you everything you need, Patricia had assured her. Within a week, Patricia delivered. Photographs of Brett and Sienna entering hotels. Receipts from romantic dinners. A detailed timeline of their meetings. Even video footage of them kissing in the parking lot of an upscale restaurant, Brett's hand possessively on Sienna's waist. Looking at those photos hurt more than Naomi had expected. Even though she already knew about the affair, seeing visual proof made it real in a way that messages on a computer screen hadn't. This was her husband, the man who'd promised to love and cherish her, wrapped around another woman. Are you okay? Patricia had asked, watching Naomi's face as she flipped through the evidence folder. I will be, Naomi had replied. And she meant it. Every photo, every receipt, every piece of evidence was another nail in Brett's coffin. He thought he was so smart, so careful. He had no idea that his wife was building a case against him piece by piece. At home, Naomi played her role flawlessly. When Brett came home late, she asked about his day with concern in her voice. When he claimed he was tired from business meetings, she offered to give him a massage. She laughed at his jokes. She complimented his tie. She was the picture of the devoted wife. And she watched him lie to her face again and again. "How was Chicago?" she'd asked one evening, knowing full well he'd never left the state. "Exhausting," he'd replied without missing a beat. "Back-to-back meetings. The client is demanding, but I think we're close to closing the deal." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you." The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but she smiled sweetly and served him dinner. Brett had no suspicion that anything was wrong. Why would he? Naomi was behaving exactly as she always had. If anything, she was being more attentive than usual, and he seemed to enjoy the extra attention. He had no idea she was documenting every late night, every suspicious charge, every lie. At work, Naomi threw herself into her projects with renewed energy. Her little marketing job, as Brett called it, was actually a senior position at a respected firm. She was good at what she did. She'd just forgotten that while being the perfect wife. Her boss, Janet, noticed the change. "You're on fire lately," she'd said during a meeting. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up. That campaign you pitched last week was brilliant." "Thank you," Naomi had replied, feeling a spark of her old confidence returning. She wasn't just Brett Hammond's wife. She was Naomi Foster, a talented marketing professional with her own skills and achievements. She'd lost sight of that during her marriage, but she was finding herself again. 2 weeks after hiring Patricia, Naomi received a call that changed everything. It came while she was at work from a law firm she didn't recognize. "Is this Naomi Foster Hammond?" a professional voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "Miss Hammond, my name is Theodore Wright. I'm calling regarding the estate of Beatrice Foster. I understand she was your aunt." Naomi's heart skipped. Aunt Beatrice. Her father's sister, a woman she'd barely known. Beatrice had been estranged from the family for decades, living somewhere on the West Coast, building a life they knew nothing about. Naomi had met her maybe 3 times in her entire life. "Yes," she said slowly. "Is everything all right? I regret to inform you that Miss Foster passed away last month. I'm the executor of her estate, and you're listed as her sole beneficiary." The words didn't make sense at first. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your aunt left you everything in her will. If you could come to my office this week, we need to discuss the details of your inheritance." Naomi sat down at her desk, her legs suddenly weak. "Can you tell me? I mean, what exactly did she leave?" There was a pause. Then Theodore Wright said words that made the room spin around her. "The estate is valued at approximately $80 million, Ms. Hammond. Congratulations." Naomi barely remembered the rest of the conversation. She made an appointment for Thursday afternoon. She hung up the phone. And then she sat very still, her hands folded on her desk, trying to process what she'd just heard. $80 million. Her Aunt Beatrice, the family mystery, had been wealthy. Very wealthy. And for some reason Naomi would never understand, Beatrice had left everything to her. Not to charity. Not to other relatives. To Naomi. The irony was almost too perfect. Brett had married her thinking she had nothing to offer but her devotion. He'd made her sign a prenup ensuring she'd get nothing in a divorce. He'd controlled their finances, spent their money on his mistress, expected Naomi to be grateful for whatever scraps he threw her way. And now she had $80 million. Money that was entirely hers. Money that had nothing to do with their marriage, that the prenup couldn't touch. Naomi started laughing, quietly at first, then harder. Her co-workers looked at her strangely, but she couldn't stop. The universe had just handed her the ultimate revenge, and Brett had no idea it was coming. She pulled out her phone and called Rebecca. "We need to meet," Naomi said when the attorney answered. "Something's happened. Something big." "Good news or bad news?" Rebecca asked. "The best news possible," Naomi replied. "Brett just lost everything and he doesn't even know it yet." Theodore Wright's office was located in a sleek downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Naomi sat in the elegant waiting room, her hands clasped in her lap, still not quite believing any of this was real. $80 million. The number kept repeating in her mind like an impossible dream. "Miss Hammond?" A tall man in his 60s appeared, extending his hand. "Theodore Wright. Thank you for coming." His office was all dark wood and leather, professional and expensive. He gestured for her to sit and opened a thick file on his desk. I'm sure this has all been quite a shock, he began. Your aunt was a very private person. She made her fortune in tech investments during the Silicon Valley boom of the 90s and early 2000s. She was quite brilliant actually, had an eye for companies that would succeed. She never married, had no children, and as you know, she'd been estranged from most of the foster family for many years. I barely knew her, Naomi admitted. I think I met her 3 times in my life. I don't understand why she left me anything, let alone everything. Theodore smiled gently. Your aunt followed your life more closely than you realized. She read every article about your college achievements, kept track of your career. When you got married, she attended the wedding, though she sat in the back and left before the reception. Naomi's eyes widened. She was there? She was. And apparently she did not approve of your choice in husband. Her notes in the will are quite specific. She wrote that she hoped you would find the strength to leave your marriage and build the life you deserved. She wanted her money to give you that freedom. Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. An aunt she barely knew had seen through Brett when she herself had been blind. The estate is complex, Theodore continued, pulling out documents. There's liquid assets, real estate, stock portfolios, and various trusts. The total value as of last month was $82 million. After taxes and administrative fees, you'll receive approximately $78 million. $78 million. Naomi couldn't even imagine that much money. What do I need to do? She asked. Sign these documents. I'll work with you to set up proper accounts, trusts if you'd like, financial advisors. This is a significant inheritance and it needs to be managed properly. I assume you'll want to keep this private? Absolutely, Naomi said quickly. My husband can't know about this. Not yet. Theodore raised an eyebrow but didn't pry. Of course. Everything can be set up in your maiden name, kept completely separate from any marital assets. The inheritance isn't community property since it's a gift to you specifically, but I understand the need for discretion. Over the next 2 hours, Naomi signed more documents than she'd ever seen in her life. Theodore explained each one carefully, patiently answering her questions. He'd already selected a financial advisory firm to help manage the money, pending her approval. They're excellent, he assured her. Conservative but smart. They'll make sure your money works for you. I want to do something meaningful with it, Naomi said. Not just sit on it. My aunt clearly wanted me to use this to change my life. I want to honor that. I think that's wonderful. And Miss Hammond? Your aunt left you something else. Theodore pulled a letter from the file. She wanted you to have this personally. Naomi took the envelope with trembling hands. Her name was written on the front in elegant script. She opened it carefully and read, Dear Naomi, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've learned about the money. I hope it surprises you. I hope it changes everything. I was married once long ago to a man much like your Brett. He was charming and controlling and he made me feel small. I stayed far longer than I should have because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over. Afraid I wasn't strong enough. But I was strong enough. And so are you. I left my marriage with almost nothing. I had to build everything from scratch. It was terrifying and difficult and the best decision I ever made. I became myself again. I became free. This money is my gift to you. Use it to be free. Use it to build the life you deserve, not the life someone else chose for you. Don't be afraid. Don't wait. Life is too short to spend it with someone who doesn't see your worth. You are capable of extraordinary things, Naomi. I saw it in you even as a child. Now let yourself see it too. With love and hope, Aunt Beatrice. Naomi wiped tears from her cheeks. A woman she'd barely known had seen her more clearly than anyone else in her life. Had believed in her. Had given her this incredible gift. She was remarkable, Theodore said quietly. I worked with her for 15 years, managing her estate. She was one of the smartest, kindest people I've ever known. And she thought the world of you. I wish I'd known her better, Naomi whispered. She wished that too. But she understood why there was distance. Family is complicated. What matters is that she wanted to help you and now she has. Naomi folded the letter carefully and put it in her purse. Thank you, Mr. Wright. For everything. The first transfer of funds will hit your new account within 48 hours, he said. After that, we'll work on moving the rest of the assets. Do you have a safe place to keep these documents? I'll get one, Naomi promised. She left his office and walked to her car in a daze. $78 million. Freedom. Power. Choice. Everything Brett thought he'd taken from her with that prenup, she now had 100 times over. She sat in her car and called Rebecca. It's real, she said when the attorney answered. All of it. The money is mine and Brett has no idea. Then we move forward carefully, Rebecca replied. This changes everything, Naomi. With these resources we can fight Brett properly. We can make sure he doesn't get a single cent, and we can make the divorce as smooth or as difficult as we choose. The power is entirely yours now. Power. What a strange, beautiful word. Naomi drove to a bank across town, one Brett would never use, and opened a safe deposit box. She placed her copy of Aunt Beatrice's letter inside, along with all the evidence Patricia had gathered, and the documents from Theodore's office. Then she went home, walking into the house she'd shared with Brett for 3 years, and she looked at it with new eyes. None of this mattered anymore. The house, the furniture, the life they'd built. She could walk away from all of it and never look back. She didn't need Brett's money or his house or anything he'd ever given her. She had her own fortune now, and she was going to use it to destroy him. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in patience and planning. Naomi moved through her days with careful precision, maintaining her role as the devoted wife while secretly preparing for her exit. The first transfer of funds appeared in her new account exactly when Theodore promised. $5 million, just the beginning of her inheritance. Naomi stared at the number on her phone screen and felt a surge of power so intense it almost frightened her. She'd never had real money before. She'd worked hard, earned a good salary, but this was different. This was life-changing wealth. She met with the financial advisors Theodore had recommended, a team led by a sharp woman named Grace Patterson. They sat in a private office and discussed investment strategies, tax implications, and long-term planning. What are your goals? Grace asked. What do you want this money to do for you? First, I want to protect it, Naomi said. I'm getting divorced and my soon-to-be ex-husband can't know about any of this. Not until the papers are signed. Grace nodded, understanding in her eyes. We can absolutely help with that. Everything will be in trusts under your maiden name. Completely separate from any marital assets. Second, I want to use it to help other women. Women in situations like mine. Women who feel trapped in marriages because of money. A foundation? Grace suggested. Yes, but I need to wait until after my divorce is final. I don't want anything to complicate the proceedings. Smart thinking. What else? Naomi thought about Aunt Beatrice's letter, about building the life she deserved. I want to start my own business. Something meaningful. I'm in marketing now and I'm good at it, but I want to do something that's entirely mine. Over the next hour they created a plan. Conservative investments to preserve the bulk of her wealth. Separate funds for her foundation and business ventures. A healthy amount kept liquid for immediate needs and opportunities. By the time Naomi left the meeting, she felt like she was stepping into a completely new life. At home, she began the subtle process of reclaiming her independence. She opened her own credit card, one Brett would never see. She found an apartment across town, a beautiful 2-bedroom in a luxury building with a doorman and security cameras. She put down 6 months' rent in cash and told the landlord she'd be moving in at the end of the month. Are you leaving your husband? The landlord, an older woman named Margaret, asked gently. Yes, Naomi said simply. Good for you, honey. You deserve better than a man who makes you look over your shoulder. Did she look over her shoulder? Naomi supposed she must. She'd become so used to Brett's control, his criticism, his demands, that anxiety had become her constant companion. But soon all of that would be over. She hired movers for a Saturday when Brett would be out of town on a legitimate business trip. She made lists of what to take. Her clothes, her books, her personal items, and the few things from her life before Brett that she'd somehow managed to keep. She'd leave behind the furniture, the art, all the things Brett had chosen. She didn't need any of it. Patricia, the private investigator, continued gathering evidence. She brought Naomi photos of Brett and Sienna at expensive restaurants, walking hand in hand through shopping districts, kissing goodbye in parking lots. The affair was blatant now that Naomi knew to look for it. How had she missed it for so long? He's gotten careless, Patricia observed. He thinks you're completely in the dark. Perfect, Naomi replied. Let him keep thinking that. Meanwhile, Brett's behavior at home grew worse. He'd always been critical, but now he was downright cruel. He complained about dinner, about how she kept the house, about her appearance. One evening, he looked at her over his plate and said, Have you gained weight? You should really watch what you're eating. Naomi, who had actually lost weight from stress, just smiled and said, You're probably right. I'll be more careful. Inside, she counted down the days until she could walk away from him forever. The most challenging part was the discovery she made one evening while Brett was in the shower. She'd been checking their joint credit card statement when she found charges from a real estate attorney. Curious, she dug deeper into his email while the water ran in the bathroom. What she found made her blood run cold. Brett was planning to divorce her. He'd been consulting with his own attorney for the past month, strategizing how to get rid of her while keeping everything for himself. There were emails discussing timing, assets, how to paint her as a dependent housewife who contributed nothing to the marriage. One email in particular stood out. The prenup is solid. She signed it willingly. She'll get nothing. I'm thinking we file right after her birthday next month. She'll be so devastated she won't think to fight it. And honestly, what could she fight with? She has no money of her own. Her birthday was in 3 weeks. Brett had been planning to divorce her on her birthday, expecting her to be too broken to fight back. The cruelty of it stole her breath. But then she read the next email and something else clicked into place. What about Sienna? When can I bring her around? Give it a few months after the divorce is final. We don't want Naomi making allegations of adultery. The prenup has a clause about infidelity that could get messy. Once everything is settled, you can do whatever you want. So Brett had been planning this meticulously. Divorce Naomi, discard her with nothing, wait a respectable amount of time, and then publicly start his relationship with Sienna. Naomi would be left humiliated and penniless while he moved on with his mistress. Except none of that was going to happen now. Naomi saved copies of every email and closed the laptop just as the shower turned off. When Brett emerged, she was sitting on the bed reading a book, The Picture of Calm Domesticity. Everything okay? He asked, watching her. Perfect, she replied with a smile. Everything is perfect. She called Rebecca the next morning and told her everything she'd found. He's planning to blindside you, Rebecca said, anger clear in her voice. What an absolute coward. Can we file first? Naomi asked. Absolutely. In fact, I think we should. We file for divorce, we present all the evidence of his affair and financial misconduct, and we catch him completely off guard. The prenup might say you get nothing, but his violation of the adultery clause combined with his misuse of marital funds gives us grounds to challenge it. And he has no idea about my inheritance? Naomi wanted to confirm. None. It's completely separate, received after your marriage and given specifically to you. It's not marital property. Even if he found out about it somehow, he'd have no claim to it. But we'll keep it quiet anyway. Let him think you're the penniless wife he expects to destroy. Naomi felt a fierce satisfaction building in her chest. When do we file? I can have the papers ready by the end of this week. How soon do you want to serve him? I'm moving into my new apartment next Saturday. Let's serve him the Monday after that. I want to be completely gone, completely safe before he knows what's happening. Naomi, Rebecca said, her voice serious. You're handling this remarkably well. But I need to ask, are you prepared for his reaction? When he realizes what's happening, he might get angry. Are you safe? I'll be in my own apartment with security. You won't be able to get to me. And honestly, Rebecca, I'm not scared of Brett anymore. He's just a bully who convinced me I was weak. But I'm not weak. I never was. No, Rebecca agreed. You definitely are not. That Saturday, while Brett was in San Francisco for a conference, the movers came. Naomi supervised as they carefully packed her belongings, everything that was truly hers. It wasn't much. 3 years of marriage and she was leaving with less than she'd brought into it. But that was okay. She was leaving with something much more valuable than furniture. She was leaving with herself. As the last box was loaded into the truck, Naomi walked through the empty spaces she was leaving behind. The bedroom where she'd cried herself to sleep so many nights. The kitchen where she'd worked so hard to make perfect meals that Brett barely acknowledged. The living room where they'd entertained his colleagues while she played the perfect hostess. She felt nothing for any of it. These were just rooms in a house that had never really been a home. In her new apartment, she directed the movers, putting boxes in rooms that were entirely hers. The space was smaller than the house but infinitely better. It was bright and modern with huge windows overlooking the city. It was safe and private and hers. She'd left Brett a note on the kitchen counter, simple and brief, visiting my mother for a few days. Left you some meals in the fridge. Love you. He wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. She'd gone to visit her mother plenty of times before. He'd probably be relieved to have the house to himself, maybe even invite Sienna over for the weekend. Let him. Let him enjoy these last few days of thinking he'd won, thinking he had all the power, thinking Naomi was the foolish, devoted wife he could discard at will. Because Monday morning, everything was going to change. Monday morning dawned clear and bright. Naomi stood at the windows of her new apartment, coffee in hand, watching the city come to life below. She'd barely slept, but she wasn't tired. She was electric with anticipation. Brett would be served with divorce papers at his office at 10 o'clock. Rebecca had hired a professional process server who would deliver them in the most public, humiliating way possible. Naomi had initially felt guilty about that choice, but then she'd remembered all those emails, all his plans to divorce her on her birthday, all the ways he'd meant to crush her. He deserved every bit of embarrassment he got. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, the investigator. Server is on his way. ETA 15 minutes to Brett's office. Naomi's heart raced. This was really happening. She'd taken the day off work, telling her boss she had personal matters to attend to. Now she sat on her new couch, her phone in her hand, waiting. Rebecca had advised her to turn off her phone after the papers were served, to let Brett rage into the void and not engage. But Naomi wanted to see his reaction. She needed to witness the moment he realized he'd underestimated her completely. At 10:03, her phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls from Brett. Text messages flooding in. What the hell is this? Call me now. Are you serious right now? You can't do this. Where are you? Naomi, answer your phone. She watched the messages pile up, each one more desperate than the last. She could picture him in his office, his face red with fury, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. All his colleagues would have seen the process server. Everyone would know his wife was divorcing him. After 30 missed calls, he left a voicemail. Naomi listened to it on speaker. Naomi, what are you doing? This is insane. You can't divorce me, you have nothing. Did you forget about the prenup? You signed it. You'll walk away with $0. Is that what you want? To have nothing? Call me back and we'll talk about this like adults. This is obviously some kind of breakdown. I'll forgive you if you stop this right now. Forgive her. The audacity was breathtaking. She deleted the voicemail and checked her security camera app. Brett had arrived at the house. She watched him storm through the rooms, probably looking for her things, discovering she was gone. He stood in their bedroom, his hands on his head, then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Naomi's phone rang again. She didn't answer. More voicemails. Where did you go? Where are your things? What is happening? Call me. Then around noon his tone changed. The anger shifted to manipulation. Naomi, baby, I'm sorry. Whatever I did to upset you, I'm sorry. Let's talk about this. Come home. We can work through this. I love you. Don't throw away our marriage over something we can fix. She almost laughed. He still thought he could manipulate her, still thought she was the same woman who'd signed that prenup 3 years ago. At 2 o'clock, Rebecca called. How are you holding up? I'm good, Naomi said. He's been blowing up my phone all day. Don't engage. Let him spiral. His attorney will contact us soon, probably trying to do damage control. This is when it gets real, Naomi. Are you ready? I'm ready. That evening, Naomi received an email from Gregory Walsh, Brett's attorney. It was formal and condescending. Ms. Foster, I represent Mr. Brett Hammond in the matter of your divorce filing. I'm sure you're aware of the prenuptial agreement you signed before your marriage. This agreement is legally binding and clearly states that you waive any right to marital assets in the event of divorce. I strongly suggest you withdraw your filing and avoid an expensive legal battle you cannot win. If you proceed, you will receive nothing and be responsible for your own legal fees. Please consider carefully before taking any further action. Naomi forwarded the email to Rebecca, who called her immediately, laughing. Oh, they have no idea what's coming, Rebecca said. Should I respond or do you want to? You respond, Naomi said. Keep it professional. Tell them we're proceeding with the divorce and look forward to discovery. Discovery is going to be fun, Rebecca said. We're going to subpoena every financial record, every credit card statement, every receipt. And when we show that Brett spent $18,000 of marital funds on his mistress, that prenup is going to look a lot less solid. What about the inheritance? Naomi asked. Should we mention it? Not yet. Let's keep that card hidden for now. Let them think you're a desperate housewife with no resources. The look on their faces when they discover the truth will be priceless. Day 2 brought more messages from Brett, these ones increasingly panicked. Naomi, please. We need to talk. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I'll do anything. Please just come home. I miss you. She blocked his number. She didn't need to hear any more of his lies. On day 3, Brett showed up at her mother's house, where he thought Naomi was staying. Her mother, who Naomi had filled in on everything, told him Naomi didn't want to see him and asked him to leave. He refused at first, making a scene on the front lawn, until her mother threatened to call the police. Naomi watched this on her mother's security camera, grateful she'd never told Brett about her new apartment. He didn't know where she was, and that drove him crazy. On day 4 his tactics changed again. He started texting about the prenup. You know you're going to get nothing from this divorce. Why are you doing this to yourself? You'll end up broke and alone. I'll fight this tooth and nail. You'll spend what little money you have on lawyers and still lose. Is this about Sienna? Did you find out? She means nothing. You're my wife. So he was finally admitting to the affair, but only because he thought it might bring Naomi back. The man was so predictable. Rebecca filed a restraining order after Brett showed up at Naomi's mother's house a second time, drunk and belligerent. The judge granted it immediately, especially after Rebecca presented evidence of Brett's increasingly erratic behavior. He's not allowed within 500 feet of you, Rebecca explained. If he violates it, he'll be arrested. Good, Naomi said. Now we can focus on the divorce. Discovery began, and as Rebecca had predicted, it was devastating for Brett. His attorney fought the subpoenas at first, but the judge wasn't having it. Every financial record was ordered produced. Every credit card statement. Every bank transaction. When the evidence of Brett's spending on Sienna came to light, Gregory Walsh tried to downplay it. Gifts to a friend aren't proof of adultery, he argued in a conference call. Rebecca calmly introduced the photographs Patricia had taken. Brett and Sienna kissing. Entering hotels. The video of them at dinner, Brett feeding her dessert across the table. The line went quiet. We're willing to negotiate, Gregory finally said, his voice tight. I'm sure you are, Rebecca replied. But my client isn't interested in negotiation. She wants a divorce, and she wants it based on your client's adultery and financial misconduct. The prenup has an infidelity clause that you seem to have forgotten about. It states that in the event of proven adultery, the agreement becomes void. That clause is vague and unenforceable, Gregory blustered. Let a judge decide that. We're happy to go to trial. More silence. Then, what does your client want? A divorce. That's all. She's not asking for alimony or assets. She just wants out of this marriage with her dignity intact. You should consider this the kindest option Mr. Hammond is going to get. After the call ended, Rebecca turned to Naomi. They know they've lost. Brett violated the prenup through his infidelity. He spent marital assets on his mistress. No judge is going to look kindly on any of that. They'll settle. How long? Naomi asked. Couple of months, maybe. They'll drag it out to save face, but they know they can't win this. Naomi nodded. She could wait a couple more months. She'd already waited 3 years too long. Meanwhile, her new life was taking shape. She'd started working with Grace on plans for her foundation. She'd also begun exploring business opportunities, ideas for ventures that excited her. For the first time in years, she was thinking about her future with hope instead of resignation. Brett's final attempt to contact her came through his mother, who called Naomi's mother asking for a chance to talk. Brett is devastated, Mrs. Hammond said. He made mistakes, but don't all husbands? Marriage is about forgiveness. You took vows. You can't just throw them away. Naomi's mother, bless her, replied, My daughter took vows to a man who broke his vows first. She has nothing to apologize for. Please don't contact this family again. Naomi listened to her mother recount the conversation and felt a wave of love for this woman who had raised her to be strong, even when Naomi had forgotten that strength. I'm proud of you, her mother said. I never liked Brett. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I wouldn't have listened, Naomi admitted. I had to figure it out myself. Well, you did. And now you're free. Free. What a beautiful word. 3 months after filing for divorce, Naomi sat in a corner office overlooking the city skyline, reviewing architectural plans for the headquarters of the Foster Foundation. She'd named it after Aunt Beatrice, whose gift had made all of this possible. The foundation's mission was clear, helping women escape financially abusive marriages. They would provide legal fees, temporary housing, job training, and counseling. Everything Naomi wished she'd had access to, she would now provide for others. The construction timeline puts completion at 6 months, the contractor was saying. We can start renovations next week if you give us the go-ahead. Do it, Naomi said without hesitation. She'd purchased the building outright, a beautiful historic structure downtown that had been sitting vacant for years. Now it would house hope. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Settlement offer received. You should sit down for this. Naomi excused herself and called the attorney. Brett is offering you $500,000 to sign the divorce papers and agree to a confidentiality clause. Rebecca said. He doesn't want any of this becoming public. 500,000? Naomi repeated. That's what he thinks will make me go away. It's actually a significant reversal from his original position of offering you nothing. He's desperate, Naomi. The discovery process revealed things even we didn't know about. He's been embezzling from his company. Not a lot, but enough to get him fired if it comes out. His mistress is demanding he leave you immediately and set her up in a lifestyle she's gotten used to. His parents are furious about the divorce. His whole life is falling apart. Good, Naomi said flatly. So what do you want to do? We can push for more, though honestly you don't need his money. I don't want his money at all, Naomi said. Tell him I'll accept the divorce on these terms. I get nothing from him, he gets nothing from me, and the confidentiality clause goes both ways. He can't talk about our marriage or me ever. And Rebecca? Make sure that clause has teeth. If he violates it, he owes me $10 million. Rebecca laughed. You really don't need his 500,000? I really don't. But I want him to know I could take him for everything if I wanted to. I just choose not to. Let him live with that. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. Naomi signed the papers in Rebecca's office, her signature confident and clear. Just like that, 3 years of marriage ended. How do you feel? Rebecca asked. Light, Naomi replied. Like I just put down something heavy I've been carrying too long. What's next for you? Everything, Naomi said with a smile. And she meant it. Her foundation was taking shape, but it wasn't her only project. She'd also invested in a tech startup founded by women, a venture that reminded her of how Aunt Beatrice had made her own fortune. She joined the board of 2 nonprofits focused on women's issues. She'd started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to do but Brett had dismissed as frivolous. She was building a life that was entirely hers, and it was extraordinary. Her marketing firm, impressed by her renewed energy and innovative ideas, had promoted her to vice president. Janet had pulled her aside after the announcement. I don't know what changed for you this year, her boss said, but you're on fire. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Naomi had just smiled. She couldn't explain that she was finally becoming the person she was always meant to be. One afternoon, while reviewing applications for the foundation's first round of grants, Naomi received an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Jennifer who had attended her college, someone she vaguely remembered from shared classes years ago. I heard through the grapevine that you started a foundation helping women in difficult marriages, Jennifer wrote. I'm a divorce attorney now, and I'd love to volunteer my services if you need legal support for your clients. What you're doing is important, and I want to help. Naomi called her immediately, and by the end of the conversation, Jennifer had become the foundation's legal director. She would supervise a team of volunteer attorneys, ensuring every woman who came to them had access to quality legal representation. This is going to change lives, Jennifer said, including mine. I became a divorce attorney because I watched my own mother stay in an abusive marriage for 20 years. She felt trapped, thought she had no options. If something like your foundation had existed then, maybe she would have left sooner. That's exactly why I'm doing this, Naomi replied. The foundation officially opened on a crisp October morning, 6 months after Naomi had filed for divorce. She stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by the team she'd assembled, local officials who supported the mission, and the first group of women who would benefit from the foundation's services. The Foster Foundation exists because someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, Naomi said in her speech. My Aunt Beatrice gave me the resources to escape a difficult situation, and now I'm paying that gift forward. No woman should ever feel trapped in a marriage because of money. No woman should ever feel like she has no choice. We're here to provide those choices, to offer support, and to remind every woman who walks through our doors that she is strong enough to build the life she deserves. The crowd applauded, and Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of accomplishment and hope. She turned her pain into purpose, her struggle into strength. After the ceremony, she returned to her apartment, exhausted but deeply satisfied. The space had become her sanctuary over the past months. She decorated it exactly how she wanted, filled it with art and books and comfort. Every morning she woke up here, she felt grateful for her freedom. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood at her windows, looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. Watched your speech online. So proud of you, sweetheart. You're amazing. Naomi smiled and sent back a heart emoji. Then she scrolled through her other messages. Friends congratulating her on the foundation's opening. Jennifer sending photos from the celebration. Grace updating her on investment performance. And one message from an unknown number: congratulations on your foundation. You deserve all the success. Patricia, the investigator who had helped her document Brett's affair. Naomi hadn't heard from her since the divorce was finalized, but the woman had played a crucial role in her escape. She sent back a thank you. As she sipped her wine, Naomi thought about Brett. She wondered briefly where he was, what he was doing. Then she realized she didn't actually care. He'd been fired from his job when his embezzlement came to light. She'd heard through the grapevine that Sienna had left him when his money ran out. He'd lost everything just as he'd planned for Naomi to lose everything. The difference was, Naomi had built something beautiful from her losses. She doubted Brett would do the same. But that wasn't her concern anymore. He was her past and she was focused entirely on her future. A future that was brighter than she'd ever imagined possible. Naomi didn't seek out information about Brett's unraveling. She didn't have to. News found her anyway, through mutual acquaintances who couldn't resist sharing the gossip about how far her ex-husband had fallen. She was at a coffee shop near her office when she ran into Tom, one of Brett's former colleagues. He recognized her immediately and approached with an uncomfortable expression. Naomi, I just wanted to say, we all feel terrible about what Brett did to you. We had no idea. It's not your fault, she replied graciously. None of you knew. The whole office was shocked when he got fired. And then when we found out why. Tom shook his head. He'd been moving company money into his personal accounts for months. Small amounts, but it added up to over $200,000. They gave him a choice: resign quietly or face criminal charges. Naomi absorbed this information without surprise. Brett had always thought he was smarter than everyone else, that he could get away with anything. How is he now? She asked, not because she cared, but because Tom seemed to want to tell her. Not good. He moved in with his parents after you guys divorced. Sienna dumped him pretty publicly. There was a whole scene at a restaurant, her throwing wine in his face, calling him a liar and a user. Someone filmed it and it went viral locally. He's basically a joke now in corporate circles. Tom paused, then added, I heard he tried to claim you took him for everything in the divorce. But nobody believed him. They all knew about the prenup, and besides, you started that incredible foundation. Everyone knows you did that on your own. I did, Naomi confirmed. And I'm very proud of it. You should be. What Brett did to you was awful, but you turned it into something amazing. That takes real strength. After Tom left, Naomi sat with her coffee and processed what she'd learned. Brett's life had imploded completely, all of his own doing. He'd cheated, stolen, and manipulated, and now he was facing the natural consequences of those choices. She felt no satisfaction in his downfall, but no sympathy either. He'd made his choices. She'd made hers. They were living the results. The gossip continued to reach her over the following weeks, even though she never asked for it. Her mother heard from a friend that Brett's parents had insisted he get therapy and find a job, any job. He was working at a call center now, a far cry from his corporate executive position. They say he's miserable, her mother reported during their weekly lunch. Living in his childhood bedroom, barely making ends meet. He signed a prenup giving me nothing, Naomi pointed out. He thought he was protecting himself from exactly this kind of situation. Turns out he should have been protecting himself from his own bad decisions. Karma, her mother said with satisfaction. He thought he'd leave you with nothing, and instead, he's the one with nothing. Meanwhile, you're thriving. It was true. While Brett's world had crumbled, Naomi's had expanded in ways she'd never imagined. The Foster Foundation was already helping its first group of women, providing legal services, counseling, and financial assistance. Jennifer and her team of volunteer attorneys were working miracles, fighting for women who'd never thought they could afford good legal representation. One of their first clients, a woman named Michelle who'd been trapped in a controlling marriage for 15 years, had walked into Naomi's office after her divorce was finalized. I don't know how to thank you, Michelle had said, tears streaming down her face. I thought I'd never be free. I thought I'd have to stay forever because I couldn't afford to leave. You gave me my life back. You gave yourself your life back, Naomi had replied. We just provided tools. You did the hard work. But Michelle's gratitude had stayed with Naomi. This was why she'd started the foundation. This was what Aunt Beatrice's gift was truly for, giving women the chance to reclaim their lives. Naomi's business ventures were also flourishing. The tech startup she'd invested in was showing impressive growth, and she'd just been approached about investing in a second company, this one focused on financial literacy apps for women. She'd said yes without hesitation. Her personal life was full and rich. She'd reconnected with old friends she'd lost touch with during her marriage to Brett, women who were thrilled to see her happy and independent. She joined a book club, started taking salsa dancing classes, and was learning to sail. Every day felt like an adventure, a chance to discover something new about herself and the world around her. One evening, while attending a charity gala for another nonprofit she supported, Naomi found herself in conversation with a group of successful women entrepreneurs. They were discussing the challenges of running businesses while maintaining work-life balance. "I don't know how you do it," one woman said to Naomi. "Running a foundation, investing in startups, serving on boards. Don't you ever get tired?" "I love what I do," Naomi replied honestly. "For years I felt like I was living someone else's life. Now I'm finally living mine. I don't want to waste a single moment of it." Later that night, as she was leaving the gala, she quite literally bumped into someone entering the venue late. Papers scattered everywhere, and they both bent down to collect them. "I'm so sorry," a warm male voice said. "I'm always rushing. My assistant says I need to slow down." Naomi looked up into kind brown eyes and a genuine smile. He was tall, nicely dressed, and had a gentle manner as he helped gather her things. "No harm done," she said, accepting her clutch back from him. "Are you here for the gala?" "Unfortunately, I'm missing most of it. Architecture emergency at a project site. I'm Daniel Torres, by the way." He extended his hand. "Naomi Foster," she replied, shaking it. "Architecture emergency? That sounds serious." "Client panic more than actual emergency, but I learned early in my career to treat every client concern as important." "Are you leaving? I feel terrible about making you drop everything." "I was, but don't worry about it." "Really? Can I at least get you a coffee sometime? As an apology for my clumsiness?" There was something appealing about his directness, the lack of game playing. Naomi surprised herself by saying, "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, and as Naomi walked to her car, she realized she was smiling. She wasn't looking for a relationship. She was perfectly happy on her own. But there was something refreshing about Daniel's straightforward kindness. The next day he texted, "Architecture crisis averted. How's Thursday for that coffee?" They met at a small cafe Naomi loved, and what was supposed to be a quick coffee turned into a 3-hour conversation. Daniel was an architect who specialized in sustainable design. He was passionate about his work, but also humble and genuinely interested in hearing about Naomi's foundation. "What you're doing is important," he said. "I have a sister who went through a difficult divorce. She felt so alone and overwhelmed. Having resources like your foundation would have helped her tremendously." "How is she now?" Naomi asked. "Great. It took time, but she rebuilt her life. She's stronger for it, though I wish she hadn't had to go through so much pain to get there." "Sometimes the hardest experiences teach us the most important lessons," Naomi said quietly. "Sounds like you're speaking from experience." "I am. I was married before. It didn't end well. I'm sorry." "That must have been difficult." What Naomi appreciated most was that Daniel didn't pry. He accepted her brief explanation and moved the conversation forward naturally. No demands for details, no judgment, just genuine understanding. As they parted ways, Daniel said, "I'd really like to see you again. Not as an apology for bumping into you, but because I enjoyed talking with you. Would you have dinner with me this weekend?" "I'd like that," Naomi replied, and she meant it. Meanwhile, Brett's attempts to contact her continued sporadically, though he was blocked on all platforms. He tried reaching out through mutual acquaintances, but Naomi's friends knew better than to pass along his messages. He created fake social media accounts to view her profiles, but she'd made everything private. Rebecca called one afternoon to inform her that Brett had contacted his attorney about challenging the divorce settlement. "On what grounds?" Naomi asked, amused. "He claims you must have had hidden assets during the marriage that you didn't disclose. He thinks he deserves a portion of whatever money you have now. The inheritance came after we separated. It's not marital property." Exactly what I told his attorney. Brett is grasping at straws. He's also apparently upset that you're doing so well while he's struggling. He's calling it unfair. Naomi actually laughed at that. He wanted me to have nothing. He planned to leave me with nothing. Now he's upset that I have something? The audacity is incredible. His attorney knows he has no case. I think this is just Brett being bitter. He'll run out of money for legal fees soon enough and have to stop. "Let me know if anything actually comes of it," Naomi said. "But I'm not worried. He has no claim to anything I have, and we both know it." That evening, getting ready for her dinner date with Daniel, Naomi reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. She'd gone from being a woman trapped in a miserable marriage, thinking she had no options, to being a successful foundation director, investor, and independent woman who was cautiously exploring a new relationship. Brett's downfall hadn't been her doing. She hadn't destroyed him. He'd destroyed himself through his own choices, his own greed, his own cruelty. All Naomi had done was refuse to let him destroy her too. And that, she thought as she looked at herself in the mirror, dressed beautifully for a date with a kind man who actually wanted to know her, was the greatest victory of all. Daniel was everything Brett had never been. Considerate, honest, and genuinely interested in who Naomi was as a person, not what she could do for him. Their relationship developed slowly over the next few months, built on real conversation and mutual respect. He never rushed her. When she told him about her marriage and divorce, he listened without judgment. "That must have been incredibly difficult," he said simply. "I'm glad you got out." "So am I," she replied. "But I'm not looking to rush into anything serious. I'm finally enjoying being on my own." "I respect that completely. I like spending time with you, Naomi. However much time you're comfortable with, that's enough for me." It was refreshing, this lack of pressure. With Brett, everything had moved at his pace according to his timeline. Daniel let Naomi set the speed, and she appreciated that more than she could express. They went to art galleries and tried new restaurants. Daniel introduced her to architecture tours of the city, pointing out buildings she'd passed 100 times without really seeing. Naomi took him to foundation events, and he was genuinely interested in the work they were doing, even offering to design their next facility pro bono. "You don't have to do that," Naomi protested. "I want to. What you're doing matters. Let me contribute in the way I know how." 6 months into their relationship, Daniel met Naomi's mother over Sunday brunch. Her mother, who'd been suspicious of every man since Brett, relaxed almost immediately in Daniel's presence. "He's a good one," she told Naomi while Daniel was in the restroom. "Don't let this one get away. Mom, we're taking things slow." "I know. And that's smart. But honey, you look happy. Really happy. I haven't seen you like this in years." Naomi realized her mother was right. She was happy. Not because of Daniel, though he added joy to her life, but because she'd built a life worth being happy about. She was successful, independent, and fulfilled. The relationship with Daniel was wonderful, but it was the cherry on top of an already delicious sundae, not the sundae itself. The Foster Foundation continued to grow. They'd helped over 100 women in their first year, providing legal representation, counseling, emergency housing, and job training. Success stories poured in. Women who'd felt trapped were now thriving in new careers. Women who'd thought they'd never be free were now living independent lives. Women who'd lost themselves in controlling marriages were rediscovering who they were meant to be. Naomi hired more staff, expanded their services, and began working with state legislators on laws to protect women's financial rights in marriages. She testified before committees, gave interviews, and became a voice for women in situations like hers had been. One afternoon, she received a call from a woman who introduced herself as Sienna. Naomi almost hung up immediately, but something made her listen. "I know you have no reason to talk to me," Sienna said, her voice shaking. "I know what I did was terrible. I was the other woman in your marriage, and I have no excuse for that. But I called because I wanted to tell you something." "What?" Naomi asked coldly. "Brett lied to me. He told me you two had an open marriage, that you were fine with him seeing other people. He showed me fake text messages supposedly from you agreeing to it. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. When I found out the truth after your divorce, when I realized he'd been lying to both of us, I was horrified. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that he's a liar. About everything. He's been trying to get money from me, claiming you stole his company and destroyed his life. He's telling people you're rich because you somehow scammed him. I just wanted you to know that I'm not helping him spread those lies. In fact, I've been telling people the truth, that he's a cheater and a con artist who destroyed his own life." There was a pause. Then Sienna added, "I also wanted to apologize. What I did was wrong, even if I didn't know the full truth. You didn't deserve what he did to you. Or what I helped him do to you." Naomi was quiet for a long moment. Part of her wanted to hang up, to have nothing to do with this woman. But another part recognized something in Sienna's voice, genuine remorse. "Thank you for telling me," Naomi said finally. "And for the apology. It doesn't change what happened, but I appreciate it. You're doing amazing things with your foundation," Sienna said. "I've been following your work. You took something terrible and turned it into something that helps people. That's incredible." After the call ended, Naomi sat with her complicated feelings. She didn't forgive Sienna exactly. But she recognized that they'd both been victims of Brett's manipulation in different ways. Sienna had made terrible choices, but at least she'd owned them and apologized. That was more than Brett had ever done. Speaking of Brett, his attempts to contact her had finally stopped after his attorney explained, apparently for the 10th time, that he had no legal grounds to challenge anything about their divorce or her current finances. The confidentiality clause in their settlement meant he couldn't publicly discuss their marriage, and the penalty for violating it would financially devastate him. He was effectively silenced. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well, Rebecca told Naomi during a lunch celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the divorce. You're not just living well, you're thriving. Meanwhile, Brett is stuck in his parents' basement, working a job he hates, with no friends and no prospects. His own choices did that to him. I try not to think about him, Naomi admitted. There was a time when I wanted him to suffer, wanted him to know exactly what he'd lost. But now, I genuinely don't care. He's irrelevant to my life. That's the healthiest place to be. That evening, Daniel took Naomi to a restaurant with a rooftop view of the city. They'd been dating for 8 months now, and their relationship had naturally progressed from casual dating to something more serious without any pressure or dramatic declarations. I have something to tell you, Daniel said over dessert, looking nervous. Naomi's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. The ultimatum. The demand for more commitment than she was ready for. She'd been through this before. But Daniel surprised her. I got offered a job in Portland, he said. It's an incredible opportunity, lead architect on a sustainable housing development. Dream project, honestly. Daniel, that's amazing. Naomi said, genuinely happy for him. You should absolutely take it. I want to. But I also don't want to lose what we have. I know we've been taking things slow and I respect that. I'm not asking you to move with me or make any big decisions. I just wanted to be honest about what's happening, and to ask if you'd be open to trying long distance for a while. Naomi felt a wave of relief and affection. He wasn't demanding anything from her. He was being honest and asking what she wanted. I'd like that, she said. I'm not ready to leave everything I've built here, and I don't expect you to give up your dream opportunity. But I care about you, Daniel. I want to see where this goes, even if it means being creative about how we do it. We could visit each other regularly. Portland's only a few hours by plane. And you can design the new Foster Foundation building remotely if you still want to. Daniel grinned. Absolutely. I've already started sketching ideas. They talked logistics and possibilities, and Naomi felt grateful all over again for this man who understood that she'd built a life she loved and wouldn't ask her to give it up. Maybe someday she'd consider relocating, or maybe he'd eventually move back. But for now they'd make it work, whatever form that took. Later, walking back to her apartment, Daniel took her hand. Thank you for being understanding about this. I know some women would have seen it as rejection or abandonment. I'm not most women, Naomi said with a smile. And I'm not 29 and desperate for someone to complete me anymore. I already feel complete on my own. You add to my life, Daniel, but you don't define it. And that's exactly how I want it to be. I love that about you, he said softly. Your independence, your strength. You know who you are and what you want. It's incredibly attractive. When Naomi went to bed that night, she reflected on how different this relationship was from her marriage to Brett. With Brett, she'd constantly been trying to be enough, to meet his expectations, to earn his love. With Daniel, she was simply herself, and that was more than enough. She'd learned the hard lesson that you couldn't build happiness on someone else's approval. You had to build it from within, on your own terms, with your own achievements and self-worth as the foundation. And once you did that, once you were truly comfortable in your own skin, the right people would appreciate you for exactly who you were. 1 year after the Foster Foundation opened its doors, Naomi stood in the ballroom of a luxury hotel, hosting the foundation's first annual gala. The event was a massive success, attended by philanthropists, activists, and supporters who believed in their mission. Over 300 women have been helped by your donations and support, Naomi told the crowd in her keynote speech. 300 women who thought they had no options now have resources, legal representation, counseling, and hope. Some of them are here tonight. She gestured to a section where several of their clients sat, women who'd been willing to share their stories publicly to inspire others. They stood and received a standing ovation that brought tears to Naomi's eyes. This foundation exists because I was lucky enough to inherit resources that gave me choices, Naomi continued. But no woman should have to rely on luck to escape a difficult situation. This foundation is about making sure luck isn't a requirement. Every woman deserves the chance to build the life she dreams of, free from control, free from fear, and free from financial dependence that traps her in unhealthy situations. After the speech, women approached her all night with gratitude and encouragement. One of them, a client named Rachel who'd escaped an abusive marriage 6 months earlier, hugged Naomi tightly. "You saved my life," Rachel whispered. "I mean that literally. I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't found your foundation." "You saved your own life," Naomi replied. "I just helped open the door. You walked through it." Daniel had flown in from Portland for the gala, looking handsome in his tuxedo. They'd been doing long distance for 4 months now, and while Naomi missed him, the arrangement was working. They video called often, visited each other monthly, and their relationship was actually stronger for having space to be independent. "I'm so proud of you," he said, kissing her cheek. "Look at what you've built." "We're building something pretty great too," she replied, squeezing his hand. Later in the evening, as donations were being tallied, Jennifer pulled Naomi aside with news. "We just received an anonymous donation for $5 million, Jennifer said, her eyes wide. "The largest single donation we've ever gotten. The donor wants to remain completely anonymous, but left a note saying they were inspired by your story and want to help other women find freedom." Naomi felt tears well up. $5 million. That would fund their operations for years, help thousands of women. Someone out there understood what they were trying to do and valued it enough to make this incredible gift. "We need to make sure we use this wisely," Naomi said. "I want to expand our services, reach more women, maybe even open satellite locations in other cities." "Already working on proposals," Jennifer replied with a grin. The gala raised over $2 million in addition to the anonymous $5 million donation. By any measure, it was a triumph. As the evening wound down, Naomi stepped outside onto the hotel's terrace for a moment of quiet. She looked out at the city lights and thought about how far she'd come in just over a year. She'd gone from a woman signing a prenup that gave her nothing, trapped in a controlling marriage, to a woman who'd built an organization helping hundreds of others escape similar situations. She turned her pain into purpose, her struggle into strength. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Watching the live stream of your speech. You're incredible, sweetheart. Aunt Beatrice would be so proud." Aunt Beatrice. Naomi thought about the woman she'd barely known, who'd seen her potential and given her the tools to unlock it. The inheritance hadn't been just about money. It had been about believing Naomi was worth investing in, capable of extraordinary things. Another text, this one from Patricia. "Saw coverage of your gala. You did it. You really did it." Even the private investigator who'd helped document Brett's betrayal was following her success. Naomi smiled and sent back her thanks. Daniel joined her on the terrace, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You okay? You seemed lost in thought." "Just reflecting. This time last year I was just starting the divorce proceedings. I was scared and angry and felt so lost. Now look at where I am. Where we all are. You earned every bit of this success. I had help. Lots of help. Aunt Beatrice's gift. Rebecca's legal expertise. Patricia's evidence gathering. My mother's support. Your encouragement. None of this happened in isolation." "True. But you're the one who took all those resources and built something meaningful. You could have just taken the money and lived quietly. Instead, you created something that's changing lives." Naomi turned in his arms to face him. "I learned something important this past year. Revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about building yourself up so high that they become irrelevant. Brett wanted me to have nothing, to be nothing. The best revenge was proving him completely wrong. Have you heard anything about him lately?" "No, and I don't want to. He's a closed chapter. The past. I'm focused entirely on the future now." What Naomi didn't know, and what she'd learned later from mutual acquaintances she couldn't avoid, was that Brett had finally gotten his life somewhat together. He'd moved out of his parents' house, found a better job, and started therapy. But the reputation he'd destroyed followed him everywhere. He was known now as the executive who embezzled from his company and cheated on his wife. No amount of rehabilitation could erase that. He tried to start a business once but couldn't find investors. He'd applied to better jobs but always got passed over. The consequences of his actions had permanently damaged his career and reputation. And according to those same mutual acquaintances, he'd been seen once at a coffee shop, reading an article about the Foster Foundation on his laptop, staring at Naomi's photo for a long time before closing the computer with an expression of deep regret. But Naomi never sought out this information. She truly had moved on. 3 months after the gala, Daniel called with news. His project in Portland was finishing early, and he'd been offered a position back home leading his firm's sustainability division. "I'd be back in the city permanently," he said. "If that's something you'd want." "Are you asking to move in together?" Naomi asked, amused. "Maybe not immediately. But I'd like to be in the same city again, see each other more than once a month. We've been doing long distance for 7 months now. I miss you. I miss you too. Come home." When Daniel returned, they took their time reintegrating into each other's lives. Naomi kept her apartment, valuing her independence and space. But they spent more time together, fell into comfortable routines, and their relationship deepened naturally. The Foster Foundation continued to grow. They opened their second location, then their third. Naomi's advocacy work led to new legislation protecting women's financial rights in marriages. She was invited to speak at universities, conferences, and in front of legislative committees. She'd become a voice for women's economic freedom, and she took that responsibility seriously. 2 years after her divorce from Brett, Naomi sat in her office reviewing applications for the Foundation's scholarship program. They were now offering grants to help women go back to school, get professional training, start businesses. Each application represented a dream that had been deferred, a woman ready to invest in herself. Jennifer knocked on her door. "Got a minute? There's someone here who wants to meet you." A young woman entered, maybe 25, looking nervous. "Miss Foster? I'm Christine. You don't know me, but I'm Sienna's sister." Naomi's eyebrows raised. "Okay. My sister told me about your foundation. I'm in a situation similar to what you went through. Controlling husband, prenup that leaves me with nothing, feeling trapped. I didn't know where to turn, and Sienna insisted I come here. She said if anyone would help me without judgment, it would be you." Naomi studied the young woman, seeing her own past fear reflected in Christine's eyes. She'd never expected Sienna to send anyone to the foundation, let alone her own sister. "Tell me about your situation," Naomi said gently, gesturing for Christine to sit. For the next hour, Christine shared her story. It was painfully familiar. The whirlwind romance, the pressure to sign a prenup, the gradual control, the loss of self. Naomi listened, took notes, and finally told Christine about the services the foundation could provide. "We can help you," Naomi assured her. "You're not alone in this. And you're not trapped. It feels that way, I know, but there are options." Christine started crying. "Thank you. Thank you so much. Sienna said you'd probably refuse to help me because of what she did, but you're here anyway. What your sister did was between her and me. It has nothing to do with you and what you need. Every woman who walks through that door deserves help, regardless of any connection to my past." After Christine left with Jennifer to start the intake process, Naomi sat quietly in her office. Life had a way of coming full circle sometimes. The woman who'd been the other woman in her marriage had just sent her sister to the organization Naomi built from the ashes of that betrayal. It was poetic in a way. And it reminded her that healing wasn't about holding grudges. It was about moving forward and helping others do the same. That evening, she met Daniel for dinner at their favorite restaurant. He'd been hinting lately about something important he wanted to discuss, and Naomi had a feeling she knew what it was. Over dessert, he proved her right. He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a beautiful, simple ring. "Before you panic," he said quickly, "this is not a proposal. Or at least, not a traditional one. I know you have complicated feelings about marriage after what you went through. I know you value your independence. I'm not asking you to give up anything or change anything about your life." "Then what are you asking?" Naomi said gently. "I'm asking if you'd consider building a future with me. Whatever form that takes. If you never want to get married again, that's okay. If you do someday want to get married, I'd be honored. If you just want to keep going exactly as we are, I'm happy. I just wanted you to know that I'm in this for the long term, whatever this looks like. And this ring is a symbol of my commitment to you, not a demand for yours." Naomi took the box and looked at the ring. It was elegant and understated, exactly her taste. She thought about everything she'd learned over the past few years. About independence and partnership. About being complete on your own and still choosing to share your life with someone. "I'm not ready to get married again," she said honestly. "Maybe I will be someday, maybe not. But I am ready to commit to building something with you. A partnership between equals. A relationship where we both maintain our independence while choosing each other every day." "That sounds perfect," Daniel said, visibly relieved. Naomi slipped the ring on her right hand, not her left. A symbol of commitment without the weight of marriage. A promise without demands. A future built on choice, not obligation. As they left the restaurant hand in hand, Naomi reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd started as a woman who signed away her rights because she was afraid of losing love. She'd become a woman who knew her worth and wouldn't compromise it for anyone. Brett had thought the prenup would protect him. Instead, it had freed her. His betrayal had hurt, but it had also awakened something in her she hadn't known existed. Strength, resilience, and the ability to build an extraordinary life on her own terms. She'd inherited $80 million and used it to gain something infinitely more valuable than money: freedom, purpose, and the power to help others find the same. That was her revenge. That was her victory. And it was sweeter than anything Brett could have ever given her.